Come on, then.
What?
Have at you!
You are indeed brave, Sir Knight, but the fight is mine.
Oh, had enough, eh?
Look, you stupid bastard, you've got no arms left.
Yes, I have.
Look!
Just a flesh wound.
Hey guys, well, here it is. This is what is left of the Rogue prototype, VTOL prototype, version 1. If you caught the last video, then you saw this at the end of the video. And basically, we were coming into a transition from forward flight to vertical flight, and there was a loud, we heard a snap, and then this thing just started rolling at a high rate and augured itself into the ground. The whole thing took about 3.2 seconds, so it was over pretty quick. Really not sure what happened yet, and so this video is going to be really the crash investigation, taking a look at the wreckage, taking a look at we had onboard video as well as Mike's video from the ground, and also DVR footage. So we'll take a look at all of that, and we'll look through the wreckage, and we'll see if we can pinpoint the cause. You can see that really the wings, the main spar, the pivot spar is completely intact. It's come undone from the joining bracket that goes between them, and we'll take a closer look at that. There you can see in the crash there is a broken spar in this left wing, and you can actually see that from the onboard view. Whether the spar is slipped or actually broken, I'm not sure. But other than that, the wings are completely intact. The tail, basically the fuselage, broke into 3 sections. A really rigid yet forgiving structure, pretty light because there are no spars in it at all. The tail is completely intact. You know, I disconnected the antenna. The wires were actually all still connected. I took those apart on site so that I wouldn't do any more harm getting it home. But that is completely intact. So I think that that might be reusable. Same with the nose. We broke some of the wooden spar or former, and that really is just cheap 1/4-inch Luan from Home Depot. So I really didn't expect it to hold up well. It's inexpensive, it's light, so for this type of testing, it's a good candidate. Camera's intact, and all in all, the nose, aside from where it ripped off, is in pretty good shape. So it didn't go in nose first. One of the motors, the right motor, came completely off. It ripped right out of the foam, and you know, in hindsight, I should have expected that to happen. I didn't have enough spar running through this section, and it pulled out. And we'll take a look and see if this had anything to do with the crash, whether this caused the crash or ended up like this as a result of the crash itself. But motor's in great shape. Both motors have broke one prop, and pretty much that's it. We're going to dig in a little bit deeper and see if we can figure out what happened. Okay, so I've disassembled some of the wreckage, and as you've seen in the video, especially that onboard video, we saw that left wing, very shortly after the transition was initiated, that left wing seemed to jump up. So something snapped and allowed that left wing to move, to rotate vertically. So that's kind of where I've concentrated my efforts. And as I started to take this apart, one thing that I noticed was here on the main pivot spar. So basically the way this works, this is the main pivot tube, and it slides into a hole here, and the wires run through the center of the tube, and they go inside this attachment here, basically like a clamp. So this slides inside, and then we just tighten it down with these two screws, and that holds that rod in there. Now, let's get that out of the way. What you can see here is that this was one piece. We had this is the push rod from the main servo, the tilt servo. And then this is an aluminum bracket that I've made here to rotate this. And then it rides on these bearings on the tube that are fixed in that stub section of wing and inside the main cage here. So you can see right in here we still have, there you can see that there, we've got one of the bearings for the right side is in here. So both bearings are in here, but here on the left side, where that left wing rotated up, you can see that it not only broke off the stub wing, but it snapped off this plywood section that basically is what the wing is, what the plane is suspended on here. So that's cluing me in that something happened here. You can see that this is cracked, right, broken clean off here. And this carbon fiber piece, it's the same piece, top and bottom. You can see it's got some extra holes in it because this was a motor mount for a multi-rotor at one time. So it's got some extra holes in it, and you can see that we snapped across right here where we have the minimum cross-sectional area, right where we have these 4 holes kind of lined up. That's the weakest point. And I'm not sure what the bending failure was. But one thing I did notice is here on the bottom, these screws are missing on this one side. So I figured that this cracked and then just ripped these screws out. Which was a great theory, except that these holes, the threads, are still good. So I don't think that I'm having a hard time thinking that the steel screws stripped and left the aluminum threads in, whole and in good shape. So right now the working theory is, I think, that these screws may have backed themselves out. These are a short screw, and they may have been missing during the flight, which put all the stress on this top plate. And as we went from this position where we have a pretty good section here, this would have been holding it, probably could have withstood the stress. As we started to rotate up, right, and started to put more load here, I think we just got a snap. Okay, so I think we've figured out what happened to the main spar and the wing, and I think we've determined that that was the cause of the crash, but I'd like to take a look and see if we can figure out what happened to that right motor. And in order to do that, we're going to take a look at the crash footage that Mike got. And I tell you, that's really hard to watch. Okay, so here we are coming in for the transition. And right about here, I initiate the transition. The wings start to transition, and you can see that spar snaps here. And if we look closely, you can see the left wing up in the air, but you can also see, if you look closely right here between the V, you can see that right wing poking out in the middle of the V-tail. So we do in fact have a full taco as opposed to a half taco. And you'll see here that that wing comes back down. So both wings have snapped. We're starting our rotation to the right. So here's our first roll, and the wings are looking kind of saggy there, kind of floppy. Kind of going in every which way. In fact, that right wing looks like it's vertical. So now we can see on that right wing that the motor is still there. So that was not the cause of the accident, which was something that I had originally thought might be what caused that sudden roll. Now we've done 2 rolls, and as we start our third roll here, you'll see that motor is right out here, kind of on the tip of the wing, which is not where it's supposed to be. And there it gets shot out to the right. And actually, I believe it beats the plane down, so it actually beat the plane to the crash site. So now, as we're spiraling down, and we're coming in at what looks like head first, I think what we saw in that earlier on-board video was that the left wing actually struck the ground first and snapped that spar. And here you can see the tail bending over backwards, and there the tail snapping off. And with all of the wires inside running through everything, we ended up with a nice, neat pile of foam. Now that we've got all this snow on the ground, probably won't be out flying again for a bit. So on the rebuild, I think maybe we'll take some time and do some material testing. Maybe set up a couple of test rigs so that we can test some of the stresses on the pivot rod, and what kind of stresses that the motors, centrifugal forces that might be acting on the servo here, you know, from those motors spinning. So we'll take a look at some of that stuff, and we'll go into it a little more in depth and see if we can actually get some real numbers to give us something better to design for. So with that, I'm going to leave this video here. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one.